Good morning, friends. It's April 6, 2019. So remember, we're in this era when I'm talking now when the Bucky stuff is pretty much suppressed. It's not in any universities. Patricia Ravasio was there in Stanford with her clipboard asking students and faculty if they even knew the archives was there, and most of them did not. Fuller's papers and stuff. This calls to mind another time when the Inquisition was very active, and Rene Descartes apparently. Now this is news to me since when I was a kid. This was never taught, and I don't think too many people know it now. This is a talk about Descartes, by the way. Descartes' Deficit. Now I used to have all kinds of ideas about Descartes, the cogito guy, right? Ergo sum, philosopher. We learned Cartesian coordinates in school. He's an important figure in civilization. Anyway, in Descartes' secret notebook, we have evidence that he actually understood what we call Euler's law for polyhedra. V plus F, vertices plus faces, equals edges plus 2. You can try that out sometime, like take an icosahedron here, or let's grab a cube real quick. So V plus F, 20 plus how many 20 faces? V is going to be 12 vertices. I can kind of figure that out from the jitterbug, right? The jitterbug doesn't add any vertices, just edges. So I already know there's 12 vertices. V plus F equals E. How many edges? So I can again think of the jitterbug. Remember my jitterbug? Cuboctahedron I know has 24 edges. I just know that. Same number as radials. Times 2. Doubled radials. So anyway, I'm going to get the right answer. V plus F equals 30 plus 2. Ditto for cube. 8 plus 6 equals 12 plus 2, and so forth. So that was credited to Euler now in all the books, but it could be that Descartes encrypted it and didn't, because, you know, if you got ahead of the church, if you knew more than they did, like Mercator, they threw him in jail. Because at the time, his map was the best, and it was better than anything coming out of, you know, the bureaucracy, the deep state. So Descartes was afraid of the deep state, and he encrypted some of his math. And the story is Leibniz. Is it Leibniz or Leibniz? I've heard them both. Wanted to get that notebook, so when it went up for auction down the road a ways, he did get it, and supposedly deciphered it. Look, I haven't read this for a while now, but we lost track of the Leibniz decoding. Now, what Fuller weaves into Synergetics quite a bit is what's called Descartes' Deficit. Now, it's interesting. In elementary schools and even high schools today, we're not teaching any of this stuff, okay? So the deep state takes our taxes and then doesn't teach our American history or literature, which continues these threads. Two kids, I know in math, I mean, it's not a big deal to learn these things. They're not hidden secret knowledge, don't get me wrong. This is not occult. This is everyday math that everybody who has a math degree at least knows. But if you're just an ordinary citizen on your way through life, don't think Descartes' deficit is going to be shared with you. But what they say, what it proves, is that if you take any polyhedron like that I'm showing on screen, and now think of these as all straight edges. So these are like, it's a true polyhedron made of stiff straight edges like showing here, okay? If you subtract, well, let's put it another way. If you add back 720 degrees, in other words, one tetrahedron's worth of degrees, if you sprinkle that around properly on each vertex, you can get each vertex to open up, right? You can get each vertex to spread to 360 and to be flat. So that's the idea of Descartes' deficit, that every polyhedron is 720 degrees away from flatness. Or put it another way, every system by which I mean omnitriangulated sphere of some kind, which is kind of also our metaphor for a thinking system, like a bubble, like Peter Sloterdijk. Now I think that's how you pronounce it. The German philosopher talks a lot about this. Worldviews, model them as spheres, take away a tetrahedron from no sphere, from no curvature, and you get the curvature of a system, basically another tetrahedron. The tetrahedron is self-dual, and if you subtract a tetrahedron, you get a tetrahedron. But that tetrahedron you get could just as well be an omnitriangulated sphere, just because of Descartes' deficit. It doesn't matter how many vertices you have, really. It's always that same one tetrahedron's worth of degrees that's missing. So in a philosophical work about spherical thinking, things like this are exciting and memorable. They stick. They're in the memory palace as relevant. And your spherical thinking means you've defined what's relevant and dismissed what's irrelevant as too far in and too far out. In other words, you've got this layer, this frequency, this spherical vibrating thought system. It's a picture, it's a metaphor, and it's got this inward direction to higher frequencies and outward direction to lower frequencies. So in Fuller's language, that's too trivial, maybe too fleeting, it's irrelevant in the high frequency direction if it's too small in some sense. And you can say in what sense. And if it's too cosmically irrelevant, that means it's like too big in some other direction to fit in your system. It's not part of your system. But you do have this twilight zone. He literally calls that the twilight zone. Kind of a sandwich around your system, which all the almost relevant, tantalizingly relevant, he says, information is flowing there. And this, I think, is an interesting description of a subjective cogito, where you feel certain about your system and then you're tantalized by all this stuff that you're not quite getting. And there's a sense that you're not getting the whole picture, you're not omniscient, you're not a god. Maybe that's the missing tetrahedron. In order to make sense in the world, you have to lose something. You have to lose one tetrahedron's worth of degrees. So that's the kind of thinking and meditation I'd say that a Synergetics reader would probably bring to the reading. And there's Descartes' deficit encoded right into it, along with other math, v plus f equals e plus 2, and so on. All of this is just part of your reverie. It keeps cycling around, coming back up. Interesting way to preserve civilization. Might even be worth teaching. All right, that'll be today's video. We'll talk to you soon.